People talk about Texas like it's one thing: booming suburbs north of Dallas, beach houses in Corpus, oil money in Midland. But drive south, past San Antonio, past the last Whataburger, past the point where your phone loses signal, and Texas becomes something else entirely. Down here, you'll find towns where homes sell for less than a used pickup truck, towns built around industries that left decades ago and never came back. Some of these places have histories that most Texans have never heard of. A few of them have histories that most Americans would rather forget. 10 towns, real prices, real stories. Number 10, Freer, Duval County. 3 wildcatters hit oil on a ranch southwest of Freer in 1928, and the town that barely existed before that moment exploded almost overnight. By the mid-1930s, Freer had somewhere between 5,000 and 8,000 people, a rough, unregulated oil town deep in South Texas brush country. Life magazine ran a photo spread on it in the 1930s and called it the last of the tough frontier oil towns. That's not local bragging, that's Life magazine, with photographers and everything. Today, Freer has around 2,500 people. The oil is still there in smaller quantities, but the boom-era energy is long gone. What replaced it is a very quiet county seat, where Realtor.com currently shows actual houses, not land, houses, under $50,000. A 3-bedroom foreclosure at roughly $48,500. A 2-bedroom around $48,800. These aren't fixer-uppers in a competitive market. They're houses in a county where the economic peak was nearly a century ago, and the trajectory since has been gradual, unspectacular decline. Duval County's median household income sits around $40,000. The population has been falling slowly but consistently. Downtown Freer has the bones of a real commercial district, wide Main Street, old storefronts, but the foot traffic to support them hasn't existed in decades. The Cha Handbook describes Freer as a community that grew quickly during the petroleum boom. It doesn't have a follow-up sentence about what came after. Number 9. Hebbronville, Jim Hogg County. Hebbronville sits at the junction of 3 state highways in Jim Hogg County, about 28 miles from the Mexican border. It's the county seat. It has a 1913 courthouse, the only one the county has ever had. And it has about 4,270 people, down nearly 10% from the last census, declining at roughly 0.42% per year, with no sign of that changing. Almost 90% of the county's population lives in Hebbronville. There is no other significant town nearby. When Hebbronville shrinks, Jim Hogg County shrinks with it. Redfin recorded a 71.8% drop in Jim Hogg County's median home price over one recent 3-month period. That number needs context. The market is so thin that a small number of sales swings the percentage dramatically. But even accounting for that, what it tells you is that almost nobody is buying. Not because prices are high, because there is almost no demand. Homes sit on the market for months without a serious offer. County infrastructure, schools, roads, emergency services, runs on a tax base that gets slightly smaller every year. The 1913 courthouse is still standing and still functioning. The county still operates. The ranching economy that built this place still technically exists, but a community that loses nearly 10% of its population between censuses, in a county with no realistic economic catalyst on the horizon, is a different kind of problem than a dramatic crash. It's quieter than that, and quieter problems are often harder to reverse. Number 8. Brackettville, Kinney County. Fort Clark was established here in 1852, and for almost 100 years it was one of the more significant military posts in the American Southwest. The Buffalo Soldiers served here. So did the Black Seminole Scouts, a unit formally organized by the U.S. Army in 1870, composed of descendants of escaped enslaved people and Seminole tribe members who had made their way from Florida and Oklahoma to Mexico. By 1872, they were stationed at Fort Clark, scouting across South and West Texas in some of the most hostile terrain on the continent. The Scouts earned 4 Congressional Medals of Honor. The Army disbanded the unit in 1914. Their cemetery near Brackettville is still maintained today by their descendants, who still live in the surrounding area, one of the more quietly remarkable facts about this corner of Texas. When the military left entirely after World War II, Brackettville had to figure out what it was without Fort Clark. The answer, essentially, is that it became a quiet county seat of about 1,300 people, and the former fort became Fort Clark Springs, a private resort and retirement community behind its original limestone walls. You can stay there for about $100 a night in a refurbished cavalry barracks. Zillow's current average home value for Brackettville is $122,615. Realtor.com shows the median listing price down 15.36% year over year. The county population is around 3,700 total, one of the lowest density counties in the state. There's a specific quality to Bracketville's emptiness. It's not the collapse of an industry, it's the emptiness of a military outpost that outlived its strategic purpose and never quite found a replacement. Number 7. San Ygnacio, Zapata County. You can drive through San Ygnacio and miss it in about 90 seconds. Population roughly 500. A few streets along the Rio Grande, 35 miles south of Laredo, on a road most GPS apps don't particularly recommend. What you'd miss is the architecture. San Ygnacio was established in 1830, before Texas was a republic, before it was a U.S. state, and according to both the Texas State Historical Association and the National Register of Historic Places, it is the last South Texas community to retain a large collection of 19th-century sandstone structures from the Spanish colonial and early Texas Republic period. 18-inch thick walls, stone cut from the riverbed and shaped by hand, buildings that have been standing for nearly 200 years on blocks where almost nobody lives anymore. The Trevino Uribe Rancho Fort, a fortified stone structure from the 1830s, still stands on Trevino Street and is open to visitors the first and third Saturday and Sunday of each month. The Lopez House is a designated Texas historical site, recently restored, now a small museum. The Museum of South Texas History describes San Ygnacio as growing from Rancho Trevino before it was even mapped. Zillow shows only 4 active listings in the entire town. Realtor.com puts the median at around $121,000, but with that little inventory, one listing can move the number significantly in either direction. The deeper issue is that San Ygnacio has almost no local economy, no grocery store within the town limits, no gas station. The buildings survived nearly 2 centuries because the economy was never strong enough to tear them down and build something modern in their place. That's one way history gets preserved, through the absence of money to change it. Number 6. Roma, Starr County. Roma sits on a bluff above the Rio Grande, and the historic district faces the river. The buildings there, river sandstone, caliche limestone, specially molded brick brought in from Mexico, look like something out of northern Mexico or the Mediterranean coast. Because architecturally, that's exactly what they are. European and Mexican craftsmen built this town in the 19th century, and PBS filmed a documentary segment here for their Shape of Texas series. Kara described the district as sitting high above the Rio Grande and representing a stunning example of late 19th century architecture. The federal government gave Roma National Historic Landmark status. The city's website describes it as 2 centuries of Texas borderland heritage. Both things are accurate. Here is the number that doesn't appear on the tourism brochure. U.S. Census Quick Facts for Roma City lists the median household income at $24,579. The poverty rate is 37.1%. Roma is technically one of the better-off communities in Starr County. Rio Grande City, just up the road and the county seat, records a median household income of $19,539, one of the lowest for any incorporated city in the United States. Zillow shows the county average home value at around $141,954. Homes in Roma start around $42,000 on the active market. The paradox is direct. A national historic landmark town where more than a third of the population lives in poverty, and where the architecture survived 2 centuries largely because the local economy was never strong enough to replace it with something newer. The Rio Grande still runs below the bluff. The old buildings are still standing. Roma isn't going anywhere. It just doesn't have many options for where to go. Number 5. Cotulla, LaSalle County. From 2009 through 2014, Cotulla called itself the hotel capital of the Eagle Ford Shale. Not ironically, they meant it. The city issued building permits, extended utilities down new roads, and watched hotel after hotel go up along the highway corridor. 20 hotels in a town of roughly 4,000 people. A $3 million Best Western opened. KUT Radio reported the count eventually reached closer to 25 lodging operations. The oil companies promised 20 years of prosperity. They got about 5. When crude prices collapsed in late 2014, the field crews left. The Texas Tribune ran a story in 2016 titled "Too Many Rooms at the Inn." Texas Standard visited the Best Western specifically and found the parking lot empty, the property closed. NPR's State Impact Texas reported hotel revenues had dropped 40% to 70% across Eagle Ford communities. In Cotulla, hotel tax collections that once funded city services fell by roughly 40% in the years immediately following the bust, according to reporting at the time. France 24 sent a reporter in 2019 and found Cotulla still carrying the weight of infrastructure built for a population twice its actual size: water lines, sewage capacity, roads, all designed for a boom that didn't return. Today, the town has about 3,664 residents. Zillow's current average home value is $110,644, down 14.4% year over year, one of the steeper declines in South Texas right now. The poverty rate is approximately 26.7%. What nobody really tells you about boomtowns is what they look like after. Not ruins, that would almost be simpler, still functioning, but slightly too large for themselves, hotels with empty parking lots, infrastructure built for a city that existed for 5 years. Cotulla is not abandoned, it's just a place that overbelieved a promise and is still figuring out what comes next. Number 4. Crystal City, Zavala County. The first thing to know about Crystal City is that it was the spinach capital of the world. There is still a statue of Popeye downtown. Del Monte ran the cannery for decades. The whole economy organized itself around irrigated spinach fields in the flat, hot Zavala County landscape. The second thing is that on January 17, 1970, roughly 300 Mexican-American activists met at Campestre Hall in Crystal City and founded La Raza Unida Party, a third-party political movement that directly challenged Anglo-political control of local and state government across Texas. Dr. Jose Angel Gutierrez led it. They won city council seats, they changed the school board, they ran statewide candidates. It remains one of the most significant grassroots political organizing efforts in the modern history of the American Southwest, and it started in a spinach town of about 8,000 people in South Texas. But the thing most people driving through Crystal City in 2026 don't know is what happened here during World War II. Between December 1942 and early 1948, Crystal City operated a family internment camp run by the U.S. Department of Justice. It held Japanese, German, and Italian families, including Japanese Latin Americans who had been arrested by their own governments in Peru, Bolivia, and 12 other Latin American countries at the request of the United States, then shipped north and interned in South Texas. In many cases, these were people from families that had lived in Latin America for generations, who lost their property when their home countries moved against them. The U.S. government intended to use some of them as diplomatic exchange currency, traded to Japan for American prisoners of war. According to Densho's documentation, the camp held 3,326 people at its peak in May 1945. It remained open until January 1948, more than 2 years after Japan surrendered. Some families had nowhere to go when it finally closed. Their home countries had taken their property. The U.S. had deported them from nations they'd called home for decades. Today, according to site documentation and Texas time travel, only concrete foundations remain in the ground. A preservation organization received a $158,000 grant in 2024 to continue documentation and community memory work at the site. Current Zillow average home value, $99,270. Census poverty rate, 38.2%. The spinach cannery is gone, the Popeye statue is still there, and somewhere in Crystal City, in an empty-looking field, the outlines of a wartime detention camp are still in the dirt. Number 3. Zapata, Zapata County. In 1953, the United States and Mexico jointly completed Falcon Dam on the Rio Grande. The reservoir that formed behind it, Falcon Lake, is a significant fishing destination today, tens of thousands of acres of water running along the border. What doesn't appear in most fishing guides is what's underneath. When the dam closed and the water rose, the original town of Zapata went under. Residents had been relocated to higher ground and a new Zapata was built, but the old town site, streets, building foundations, the physical skeleton of a community that had existed since the 18th century went to the bottom of the reservoir. Not accidentally, deliberately. The New York Review of Books published a detailed account of the Falcon Reservoir project in January 2024, describing it as the flooding of Zapata and surrounding communities to create a reservoir that serves flood control and irrigation needs for both countries. In drought years, it comes back. Falcon Lake dropped 47 feet during one severe drought, and sections of the old town emerged from the water. Facebook documentation from Texas Crossroads official records the re-emerging foundations and, in some conditions, the old church steeple. In 2024, as water levels fell again, portions of what locals call Old Zapata became partially visible once more. Divers and fishermen have reported the submerged streets for decades. Across the border, Guerrero Viejo, an 18th-century Mexican town flooded by the same dam project, has similar emergence events. Its old stone basilica partially resurfaces when the water drops enough. The current town of Zapata has about 4,831 people, declining at roughly 0.33% annually. Zillow average home value, $131,386, down 3.7% year over year. One real estate forecast projects a further 8.4% decline. The lake holds more history than most people realize, literally, not figuratively. Number 2. Falfurrias, Brooks County. Falfurrias is a town of about 4,600 people on U.S. Highway 281 in Brooks County, roughly 70 miles north of the Mexican border. The main landmark most travelers notice is the Border Patrol Interior Enforcement Checkpoint on the highway, a standard inspection stop that's been operating for decades. The checkpoint is the reason Brooks County has one of the darkest documented records of any county in the American interior. Migrants crossing the border without authorization routinely avoid the checkpoint by going around it, through private ranch land, through dense South Texas brush, through terrain where summer temperatures regularly exceed 100 degrees Fahrenheit and shade is nearly non-existent. Brooks County has recorded more migrant deaths than any other county in Texas's interior. The Strauss Center at the University of Texas has published formal research on Brooks County specifically, documenting the recovery of remains going back decades. Since 2009, county authorities have discovered more than 525 sets of remains, according to ABC 10 reporting citing Brooks County records. Texas State University's Operation Identification Forensic Program has worked to identify bodies recovered here. Many are buried at Sacred Heart Burial Park in Falfurrias, approximately 80 miles from where people crossed. PMC research published in the National Institutes of Health database notes that in 2012, Texas surpassed Arizona in total migrant deaths, with Brooks County the primary concentration point. Time Magazine, VOA News, and The New Yorker have all covered it. This is not anecdote. Falfurrias' Zillow average home value is $70,557, down 11.9% over the past year, one of the lowest averages of any incorporated South Texas town with an active housing market. Redfin recorded a 33.4% drop in median sold price over a recent 3-month period. Brooks County has no hospital. The nearest emergency room is in Alice, about 45 miles north. Median household income for the county is around $32,000. The town itself is quiet. Hardware store, a few restaurants, a Dollar General. The weight of Falfurrias doesn't come from what's inside it. It comes from the ranchland surrounding it and from what has been happening out there, in the heat, for 30 years. Number 1. Catarina, Dimmitt County. By 1929, Catarina had somewhere between 1,000 and 2,500 residents, depending on whose count you use. It had a bank, at least 2 grocery stores, a lumber company, a bakery, a hotel, an actual civic infrastructure in the middle of the South Texas brush. By 1931, 2 years later, the population had dropped to 592. This wasn't a slow fade. This was a collapse compressed into roughly 24 months. Catarina had been built on agricultural ambition. The Winter Garden region of Dimmitt County promised irrigated farming of onions, vegetables, and crops that sold well when water held and markets cooperated. The Taft family, who had money and connections in the early 20th century, poured investment into it. A railway connection was established. Catarina was marketed as a real town with a real future in the Texas brush. The combination of drought and the 1929 stock market crash hit simultaneously, and Catarina went from a functioning commercial center to a near ghost town in the span of a few years. By 1943, the CHA records only 403 residents and 7 businesses. By 1990, the census counted 68 people. The 2026 World Population Review estimate is 75 people. Declining at 3.85% per year, Texas Demographic Center projects as few as 135 depending on the methodology, but no source puts Catarina above 200. The direction is not in question. Realtor.com currently shows Catarina listings starting at $72,500 for a 2-bedroom, 750-square-foot house. Zillow shows 4 total active listings in the entire zip code, 2 homes sold in the entire town in recent tracked Zillow data. The market isn't just slow, it barely exists as a market. The name Catarina has been associated with the area since at least 1778. Texas Escapes documents that local legend holds it's the name of a Mexican woman killed near the site centuries ago. Nobody can verify that now. What's verifiable is that Catarina was, for a brief moment in the late 1920s, a genuine South Texas town with actual momentum. And then it wasn't, and it has been unwinding slowly ever since. Today it's a sharp bend in the road in Dimmitt County, a couple of structures, and a post office that still technically operates for 75 people. Mesquite has reclaimed a lot of what was once cleared for farming. The brush doesn't wait. 10 towns. Every price figure in this video is publicly available on Zillow, Redfin, or Realtor.com right now. Every historical fact has a source. CHA, U.S. Census, Densho, peer-reviewed research. Nothing here required exaggeration. South Texas is one of the most historically layered regions in this country. It's also one of the most economically isolated. Those two facts have been connected for a long time, and they'll probably stay connected for a while longer. If you knew about any of these places already, drop it in the comments. And if there's a South Texas town you think belongs on a list like this one, tell me which one and give me a reason. Serious suggestions only. The research takes time. More coming.